What's up, everybody? Welcome into another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz. We are talking North Carolina today. As the ACC turns, we focus in on the North Carolina Tar Heels, who can't seem to make up their mind about where exactly they want to go, how exactly they want this all to look, whether it's going to be remaining in the ACC, which seems laughable, but it does appear that there might be a faction that is more in like an ACC traditionalist sort of mode at North Carolina, or do they want to go to the Big Ten, which would be more in line with the ACC crowd, or are they ready to embrace being in the SEC? All that seems to be halting some progress potentially at North Carolina right now, although who knows how much that really matters when you have Florida State and Clemson out doing the dirty work for everybody by taking on these lawsuits head on in court. So there's a lot to digest, a lot to kick around there with what's happening in North Carolina. But the bottom line is it all looks a little ridiculous. It looks a little ridiculous from the outside on what is going on with UNC right now. It's also very confusing when you have a board of trustees at North Carolina, a board of governors in the state, and all of the different influences that are there. North Carolina, honestly, to me, is the most fascinating piece of what's happening in the ACC right now. It's just not nearly the most consequential because they've probably got plenty of time to sort of stammer around here. Well, Florida State and Clemson go do all the work. But North Carolina is where there's infighting, there's factions, there's people tripping each other up with lawsuits. And that's what we have this week with what is going on with the Tar Heels, who are, by the way, still the most coveted brand that is left not named Notre Dame on the conference realignment board. So there's a lot of interest there in what is going to happen at UNC. Oh, by the way, not even leading the show today because I do find North Carolina to be more interesting. I feel like for a lot of us, we kind of glaze over the NCAA stuff. It's like this huge, massive, world-changing, paradigm-shifting college sports moment. What is likely to happen this week, like this week, would be the most consequential week potentially in college sports history with what is likely going to happen. It sounds like everything is on track. The reporting from all corners of the college football world is indicating that it's on track to happen this week to get the settlement ironed out with the House lawsuit, which would include revenue sharing and everything that would be in place by the 2025 football season. Like, that's here, people. That is likely to be approved, at least on the college side of things, this week. And it's not even the most important thing everybody is talking about. But there's two in-depth stories to dive into, one from Ross Dellinger, one from Pete Thamel of ESPN. And for my money, those two guys are about the best out there doing it right now. And certainly most consistently, Ross Dellinger has just been like consistently churning out content, banger after banger after banger, of just great stories, lots of details, everything that you need to know that's going on. And another element of this actually is G5 feels like they're getting screwed. G5 feels like they're getting screwed in the back pay portion. Remember, NCAA is like, we'll take care of a piece of this. You guys are going to have to take care of the rest of the back pay. It is no longer the belief that the NCAA is going to get all of that. They're going to withhold some payments to these schools to cover about half of it. And then everybody else, it's a 60-40 split there, by the way. And G5 is not pleased with what their portion of this winds up being, because for them, it will be a much higher percentage of their budget, even though it is less money overall than what the P5 schools are going to pay. So another headline that's kind of like we just have come to expect it in college athletics. Like, hey, you're really screwing G5 here. You're really screwing conferences like the Big East, which there was a memo that came out, an email that Ross Dellinger procured from the Big East that is a big piece of this. And the Big East obviously is not, they're a Power 6 basketball conference. I guess we'll go Power 5 now. This is confusing. So now it's Power 5 basketball and Power 4 or whatever. Anyway, you get the idea. They're a power conference in basketball, but they're not happy with their role here and what they are going to have to pay. It would be a big deal if not for, the hundreds of times it feels like we've seen, especially in the last 3 years, everybody just trample on who's below them on the on the food chain. So that's going on again. That is happening. That's going to be the meat of what we discuss today. There are some fun other stories. Jimbo Fisher, although I will say careful a little bit with the headline here. Jimbo Fisher was not really trying to be derogatory by nature. It was not mean spirited when Jimbo Fisher said this, but he did call the Big 12 and the ACC in essence glorified JUCOs. Not great. But he was just trying to be realistic about the situation. And Florida State thinks the NCAA is kind of screwing them again. So they have another bone to pick with the NCAA outside of everything that they dealt with in the fall with being an unbeaten conference champion that did not make the college football playoff. You guys know the drill. If you want to direct some of the content, you want to change the topic from anything that I just laid out there, whatever is on your mind, you can get on the show. You can guarantee that you make it on the show with your question or comment tonight by clicking the $ below the chat box. That is how you can attach a donation to your chat. It will make it a super chat, which will pin it in a separate column for me and ensure that it makes it onto the show tonight. It's also just a great way to support the channel, support the work that I'm doing to bring you this conference realignment, college football, college hoops content on a week in, week out basis. I could not do it without all of your support, and I appreciate it so much. You guys, sincerely, I could not do it without you, so thank you, everybody who does that. Just like my guy, Eddie, who I'm going to get to that super chat to kick things off here in just a moment. But we also have a submission from my guy, Clint, on Venmo, and it's a perfect opportunity to remind you that if you are not watching the show live, you can also contribute to the channel on Venmo. It is John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo in order to do that. And if you leave your question or comment there, you will get it read to kick off the next show. And that is exactly what happened with Clint here. So you can still be a part of the conversation, even if you are not catching these live. If the live stream times aren't working for you, you are still very much included. And you can also support the channel for free, totally free. Just give me one click. You click the like button on the video. That really helps. Leave a comment, not only in the live comments that are happening here, but underneath the video after it is done in the comment section there. All of that stuff really helps. North Carolina fans would love to hear from you on where you think North Carolina ends up when it's all said and done. And even if you're not a UNC fan, let me know in the comments what you think about where UNC winds up when it is all said and done. Okay. Boy, loading a little bit slow here, computer today, but we got to start with my guy, Eddie. If you need a real estate agent in San Antonio, you know who to call. Eddie Lozano, San Antonio Real Estate. My guy popping in here as he had to bail as the show was starting, but appreciate it, Eddie. Eddie says, hey, buddy, have to go, but wanted to let you know BYU did another Fan Fest. So BYU did Fan Fest in Phoenix, Arizona. That's what the Big 12 needs to do, Fan Fest, to gain more fans and viewers. I will say, Eddie, I think the Big 12, and I think I told you the same thing last time, the Big 12 is at least, I think, somewhat in lockstep with you on this. BYU has a little more reason to do this than some in the league because they have such a national fan base. With the LDS Church, they're going to have more reach and more pull in different places across the country, and they're certainly leaning into that and trying to take advantage of it. But the Big 12 as a whole, I mean, they've gone to Rucker Park in New York. They're moving Media Day to Vegas. They were trying Big 12 Mexico. Obviously, that's been stalled for the time being, but they were at least making an attempt there. Although I think what you're saying is, hey, just go around the country before you would even worry about getting international. But I think Brett Yormark is a guy who definitely agrees with that. Whether or not that becomes individual schools doing more of this or the Big 12 as a whole, I think it probably makes more sense, Big 12 as a whole, to go attack things like that. Like what happened when they went to Rucker Park in New York. They brought a bunch of representatives from all across the conference. That's the way to do it. Maximize your reach, maximize your pull as much as possible by doing that. So I think there's a good chance that we do start to see more of those things coming around, Eddie. I really do. And I'm honestly glad that you pointed this out to me. You brought up one of the previous Fan Fests that BYU did. I was going to look that up. BYU Fan Fest. I think was it the Dallas one? First thing that pops up here is Dallas, and it looks like I had clicked that already. So yeah, Dallas, Phoenix, BYU, taking their show on the road, making sure that they get the brand out there to everybody involved. But you are correct. Big 12 needs to do things differently. They need to fight and scrap as much as you can for the audience. So as long as it makes dollars and cents with whatever the cost is going to be to go around the country and your ROI, whatever you think the ROI is on that, I think you will get some of that. So anyway, appreciate you, Eddie. Thank you so much for doing that and stopping in to do that right as we kicked off the show, even though you had to leave. Tremendous supporter of the channel, and I truly, truly do appreciate it, my friend. Thank you so much. Let me make sure I don't forget Clint, who again is on Venmo. It's John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you want to leave your question or comment there and you are not watching the show live, that is the way to do it. Clint says, awesome shows. Thank you, sir. Task at hand for Big 12 schools is to budget $22 to $25 million per year. Hoping the House settlement places guardrails on NIL. Would rather see transferring for more playing time than dollars. Seems like the NIL market way overcorrected itself. Athletes equal employees, hashtag collective bargaining. The budgeting piece of that is going to be really tough. You guys know my stance. If you've been watching the channel for a while, I've said it over and over again. One of the big dividing lines to me, and it's kind of caught me off guard that it's come up to the point where like this week we may have the plans in place for it. Likely will. It sounds like likely will have the plans in place for your $22 to $25 million per year, basically like, hey, you don't have to do this, but this is the maximum that you can if you want to be as competitive as possible. It's just it feels like it's damn near impossible for Big 12 schools to do that. That's where the extra $30 to $40 million from your TV contract really benefits you. That's where the Big Ten and the SEC obviously really, really benefit from that. I don't know what a realistic number is though for Big 12 schools. In fact, like I would very much like to know what like a Big 12 athletic director would tell us about what they are budgeting for that or what they think is a realistic target for that. ACC too. Obviously, I think a Big 12 first, being from Big 12 country. But one of those athletic directors tell me, like, this is what I think we could, like, actually realistically do. And then there will probably be some trial and error with that, right? Where you're going to have to see it in action. Say the number is like 10 or $12 million. Like an average Big 12 school can do like 12. Well, then you do that and you see how much that hurts or doesn't hurt you. Is it still going to be so much? Will that money be so evenly divided because of Title IX between male and female athletes that it would still come down to like the third party NIL collective sort of contributions that you're dealing with now? That very much could be the case. And so it wouldn't matter as much. Perhaps I could be a bit off on this, that this won't be like the real huge thing. I don't know. We're just going to kind of have to see. I don't think anybody really totally knows, but it will definitely be a way to get a financial advantage if you are those schools. Maybe not the way, but at least a way. And I still tend to think that it's going to wind up factoring in pretty significantly as far as that goes. And some of the Dellinger's reporting has changed a little bit. There was a quote, like a week and a half ago or so from an admin in college athletics that was worried in his story, like wondering aloud, like, will this actually do anything to curb the wild west of NIL? Then it sounded like maybe there would be something that would have bit. So if you're asking me like what will be some of the intrigue of this week and seeing what this thing actually looks like when it comes out, that would be a big part of it. What is it going to do as far as NIL goes? Will they be able to actually accomplish anything that will make people feel better about where this is at? So that'll be a tough one, Clint, for Big 12 schools. I would think, I mean, if there is, I would think BYU would be in contention to provide about as much as anybody in the Big 12. Would rather see players transferring for more playing time than dollars. Yeah, obviously a lot of that will depend very much so on what the NIL market looks like and if they do curb any of that, if it changes at all. The NIL market has very much way overcorrected itself, and that's why a lot of people do basically say, like, right now it looks like the best time ever to be a college athlete, because it's never going to get more wild westy than it is right now. They may be able to rein it in a touch as we move forward. Never going to be more so than what it is right now. I wouldn't think. I guess maybe if there are no guardrails and then bidding wars continue to ramp up and up, But I don't know. It feels like this is about as good as it will ever get to be a college athlete. So some of them are just hitting it perfectly right now. Anyway, Clint, good thoughts, my man. Thank you for being here. Thank you for contributing and supporting the channel as always. Lovely to have you here to start the show. Shane, what's going on, Shane? Shane says, well, UNC is a public Ivy, a Directors Cup winner, all of that. They need to be fine and settle into the 12 for now and wait for movement elsewhere. Ooh, Shane advocating for North Carolina to the Big 12. Can we start a new faction here with my guy Shane to get North Carolina into the Big 12? Somebody slip that into somebody's ear down there in Chapel Hill. I mean, I would obviously welcome that. I would love it. But they're probably sooner than later going to get movement in the ACC based on Florida State and Clemson. Now, I am of the opinion now that it appears that won't be as easy or quick as it once appeared to. Now that if you caught the last live show, the theme of that was that the ACC is kind of like putting its foot down and being like, look, we're not going to give in and just wind up being a place that settles down to negotiate with you. So they're not going to settle, basically. I don't know why I was stammering around that. The ACC is now putting out the message through guys like Brett McMurphy, another excellent reporter, that they're not going to settle. They don't want to settle with Florida State and Clemson. They don't feel like there's any reason to. There's no leverage to, or they have the leverage to not do that. So they're not. And that makes it seem like it's going to take longer. UNC, I mean, it feels to me like the faction between like ACC/Big Ten and SEC, kind of that sort of vibe that appears to be going on there. It seems to be like thumbing their nose at the SEC almost a little bit. I can only imagine how much they would thumb their nose at the Big 12. You know, I mean, Public Ivy, Directors Cup, like schools that are like that, the Learfield Directors Cup, that's a reference to basically having the best overall athletics program in the country. If you win the Directors Cup, all your non-revenue sports are going to be very, very good. Schools like that, I mean, they don't think much of the Big 12. All right, we know what Texas thought of the Big 12, but, you know, your Stanfords of the world, not going to think a whole lot of the Big 12. So, look, Shane, I would love it, man. I would love it. And if you can get the word out to Chapel Hill, I will definitely help support you. But I think UNC is going to be in the SEC or the Big 10 within the next, you know, got to think about this one. I mean, 5 years. Can I put a nice safe cushion on it? 5 years, but I would imagine the ACC stuff gets resolved within the next couple of years, probably. Anyway, Shane, appreciate you, my man. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your support of the channel. Julius, you are far too kind. Thank you for your contribution. Always love seeing you here in the chat. Always great when you stop by. Thank you so much. Julius says, howdy, John. I would like to contribute to the John DeProvo fund, but can this please go to the Don't Let Utah Win the Conference Their First Year fund? I fear they are scary good. Julius, I will 100% make this donation to the Don't Let Utah Win the Conference of the First Year fund. Now, I have all the respect in the world. I feel like I need to throw out this disclaimer every time I do this. I have all the respect in the world for Utah's football program and Kyle Whittingham. They've obviously been very good. Where we get crosswise is the fans and their thoughts on the Big 12, the superiority complex coming into the Big 12, and as good as that football program has been, and it has been good, there is an inflated ego. There is an inflated sense of what they believe that conference actually is. That is where we get crosswise, and that is why, yes, I will donate it to the Don't Let Utah Win the Conference in Their First Year fund. But man, part of the problem here is that let's look at this thing. Utah football schedule. They have such. Did I go through this the other day on the channel? I get mixed up what I've done on the podcast recently and then this, but Southern Utah, Baylor, Utah State, Oklahoma State. I mean, they're at Oklahoma State. That will be tough. And that is the game. If you want a game to circle on the Big 12 schedule, that is one. That is early. That is September 21st. Utah has to go to Oklahoma State. All this talk about Joel Klatt saying, Utah is going to be the most difficult place to play in the new league by far. All right, man. Walk your happy ass into Boone Pickens. We'll see how that goes. They do have Arizona home game after that. So it's a tough start to Big 12 play. But then at Arizona State, TCU, at Houston, BYU, at Colorado, Iowa State at home, at UCF. They don't have to go to Provo. They get the rivalry game at home. They don't have to go to Iowa State, which like November 23rd, you do not want to be going to Ames. That's not a good place to be. They miss both Kansas schools, KU and K-State, who I think are finishing top 3 in the conference this year. So kind of a little kiss with that schedule there. But as far as the John DeProvo fund goes, look, I feel like I wouldn't be able to live it down if I don't make it to that game. So I'm going to be doing everything I can to get there. We can go ahead and put feelers out now. If any of my great BYU fan friends out there have like a lead on tickets, if and when that time comes around, we'll say when that time comes around, please let me know at J.O. Kurtz on Twitter. You guys know how to find me. So, I believe I do. I also I have an email address now that I made for the show. If you just johnkurtzshow@gmail.com, you can send something my way there too. So anyway, Julius, appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. Great to chat with you. And we will talk soon, my friend, and hopefully talk in Provo before too long. All right. What's up, Daniel? Appreciate you, Daniel. Always great to see you. Cat fan in Huskerland, a.k.a. Daniel Osborne. Daniel, just checking in real quick, celebrating Barbara's birthday this evening. We'll watch later. Love that. Happy birthday to the lovely Barbara. Congratulations and a happy birthday to her. Wishing her all the best in this next year. And same to you, Daniel. Always appreciate your support. And thank you so much for popping in. Hope you enjoy watching this back later, my friend. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Drew. Dr. Drew. What is up, Dr. Drew? Is this the Dr. Drew? No, I know that's spelled differently, right? Dr. Drew, thank you, sir. Love all the work you do, John. As a UCF fan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on if after 1 year, you're happy UCF is in the conference and where they will be in 5 years. Oh, I'm happy to answer that, Dr. Drew. Thank you again, sir, for coming in and your support of the channel. Yeah, I'm definitely happy. I never really understood. It seemed like there was a faction of Big 12 fans when that was happening that like cast some doubt on UCF and the validity of UCF being in the league and what, UCF to me has as much potential. I'll say as much potential as anybody of the new schools that came in, because I think to me, it would be like BYU based on their history, right? Being a school that's won a national championship, like BYU national fan base and their history. I think you've got to say they've got a really high ceiling. UCF, young program in the grand scheme of things in the state of Florida, as talent rich basically as it gets in the country. And a massive alumni base, right? Just a huge school that's churning out a bunch of alums. Like that to me gives you star power potential in the Big 12 landscape of things for sure. So yeah, and I mean, in the short term, having Gus Malzahn, I mean, you've got a really legitimate coach. I think Malzahn is legit. I think Auburn's just so crazy, that situation he gets run out of perhaps when he shouldn't have. And you look at what Auburn's been, just kind of chasing their tail. Since then, they chew up people and spit them out. So yeah, I think UCF is in a very good position where they'll be in 5 years. I think there's no reason why they can't be one of the top tier programs in the Big 12. Like I wouldn't go out and say like they will be definitively but if we're talking about like at that point, we'll have a 16 team conference. If we're talking about a top 4, we'll go like top 4 probably. I think they have a very good chance to be a top 4 program in the Big 12 by then. I do believe in UCF there. So yeah, I am definitely happy to have them in the conference, and I very much believe in UCF's potential, Dr. Drew. So thank you for checking in here. Great to hear from you. All right, good stuff, everybody, to get this thing rolling. And man, I guess we have touched obviously on North Carolina, but I've not gotten to the nuts and the bolts of this so far. So let me dig in here. Okay. Earlier this week, it's been a busy North Carolina week, because earlier this week we had some of the drama that was going back and forth with Bubba Cunningham and an audit of the UNC athletic department. I'm going to read to you from TarHeelBlog.com. I thought it's the SB Nation site for North Carolina. I thought they did a really good job kind of summarizing this, but The UNC Board of Trustees has been meeting to go over various budget items to submit to the Board of Governors. A few stories have emerged. As a public university, even though the budget is mostly privately funded, the athletic department still has to have their budget approved by the state. Anyone who went to Carolina knows they partially fund the department with athletics fees. In the latest budget proposal, the athletic department admitted to being about $7 million short this past year. They'll be $17 million short next year, and the future budgets show about a $100 million total deficit. Remember this when we talk about, hey, the goal is, the target is, you got to earmark $22 million to be able to revenue share with athletes here. I mean, this is North Carolina we're talking about, and that is the budget deficit that they were facing, and that was all reported by Brian Murphy at WRAL. In his story, members of the Board of Trustees expressed they couldn't understand how the athletic department would run at a deficit, and they laid some blame, some criticism at the feet of Athletic Director Bubba Cunningham. The article here says it was to the point the Board of Trustees actually authorized a full audit of the athletic department just to see how the money is being spent and if there is a way to save money. Remember this. It's the key here. When we go back to the Board of Governors in North Carolina, which is overseeing not just North Carolina, but all the institutions that are under that umbrella, including NC State, they put into effect that rule that if you're going to leave a conference, basically you have to submit a full proposal about like budgetary reasons why you would be doing it, and that has to be approved. So you've got to basically take that to the teacher and get approval to leave the class. You got to get your hall pass. You know, they got to give you the, back in my, I don't know, they give you like a big key or an apple or something that was like your hall pass to go leave. You got to get that thing before you can actually leave, with the idea being, hey, a lot of NC State influence on that board. They don't want North Carolina to just leave without NC State. So the audit would seemingly be a big first step to that. We're like, all right, well, let's just go audit this thing and let's show them a compelling case as to why we need this money. So that was what was happening earlier this week. Part of that earlier this week was that there were comments made like, hey, we're going to go into a closed session. Closed session is the specific wording there, making sure I got that right. We're going to go into a closed session at our next Board of Trustees meeting at North Carolina to talk about the athletic budget. We want to do this behind closed doors, which would seem to be progressing forward to this. Like, hey, let's look at all of these problems. We need more money. We should probably be thinking about trying to get to the SEC or the Big Ten. Look at what Florida State and Clemson are doing. But instead, that was not able to happen. And here is the latest story from WRAL. The chairman of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill's Board of Trustees said it would not discuss the school's athletic budget in a closed session Thursday, despite saying it would do that during a special meeting on Monday. The about face came after a complaint that was filed Wednesday afternoon in Orange County, alleging that the board was in violation of the state's Open Meetings and Public Records Act. So you guys can't do this behind closed doors because we have this rule in place. The Open Meetings and Public Records Act says that you can't. And the complaint was filed by attorney David McKenzie, who focuses on intellectual property litigation. McKenzie is also the father of a current UNC student. A judge granted a temporary restraining order to stop the board from going into closed session to discuss UNC athletics financials, budgeting, deficit, or ongoing or future conference realignment and related strategic planning. That's a hell of an umbrella to encompass everything and say, yeah, where are we going to be in the future? Big Ten, SEC, are we sticking around in the ACC? It's a big old umbrella to cover all of that they would have talked about, but they didn't, because instead we get a judge granting a temporary restraining order. And even the ACC, man, you can't turn around in the ACC without getting hit in the face with a lawsuit. You literally, you cannot move your body at all. It is like shoulder to shoulder with legal papers, legalese everywhere. You're going to get hit with a stack of papers. There's a gavel. Oh my God, I just turn around. There comes a gavel flying right by my face, just whizzing by. I can hear it in my ear. That's the ACC right now. It's just like litigation everywhere. This isn't even conference on conference crime. This is school on school crime, UNC within UNC. because it does very much appear that they're still in a stage where they have people that want one thing, they have people that want another thing, they have people that want another. And the options here, quite obviously, would be ACC, Big Ten, SEC. They are very, very coveted. So they will definitely have the options. Like they're going to have a landing spot in the Power 2. But perhaps there are some around there that it's going to take some time to get them there, as much as it is glaringly obvious financially what would need to happen in North Carolina. When you have stuff like this going on, it tells you that like there's definitely some resistance there right now. And then even within that, if you do theoretically have your pick of SEC or Big Ten, yeah, that can be a tough decision. And there are definitely going to be some who would prefer like the more like joining the kind of academic elites, like stuffy Big Ten kind of thing, instead of just going down to, we ain't here to play school. Let's just get some football rolling in the SEC. Feels like there's a lot of that going on at North Carolina right now. And that's why you have things like judges having to grant temporary restraining orders to stop the board from talking about this stuff behind closed doors. So like that's North Carolina right now. Honestly, some Texas vibes here from North Carolina, which I guess would make sense when you've got Mac there as your football coach. But the Texas vibes to me were like, what did we always hear? And look, I very much believe it about why it was so hard to be a head coach at the University of Texas, particularly the football head coach at the University of Texas, because there are too many cooks in the kitchen. And there are too many people pulling one way and too many people pulling another, and not everybody on the same page, and basically too much money involved, where you truly felt like, because there's so much money involved, so many people feel like they have the say. They are the biggest hat in the room, and they need to be the one making decisions. That feels like there's a little bit of that going on here. And honestly, if I were to say North Carolina, I very much obviously respect your basketball program. Thank you for giving the world Michael Jordan. I very much respect the football program and where it's at with Mac Brown. But I've always viewed North Carolina from the outside as more of like a country club sort of vibe. That seems fair. And they're a very successful country club at that. I very much envy the brand. I would love to have it. But that's kind of the vibe I get from them, which again is what I've said about Texas for years. Now, Steve Sarkisian seems to have really been able to change that vibe in football. It's a huge feather in his cap as a coach. But UNC seems to be kind of stuck in that mode a little bit. And this all oozes some of that to me. And country clubs and people who are very litigious and lawsuits, all that seems to go hand in hand too. That's what it feels like at UNC. So the board did go into a closed session on Thursday, but not before saying it would not discuss athletics. So we didn't actually get the athletics discussion there. Near the beginning of Thursday's full board meeting in open session, Chairman John Pryor read a statement seeking to correct and clarify the board's intent. Here's what he said. Quote, I want to clarify comments made during that meeting that made a suggestion that we planned a separate budget presentation for athletics in an upcoming closed session. We do not schedule budget presentations and discussions for closed session, and we did not do that this week. That would make sense, right? This kind of like open records. What do we have this specifically? Open Records Act, the Open Meetings and Public Records Act. When you have something like that, it would make sense that if it's going to be like budget related, that would be the loophole that you could catch it on. Look, can't go behind closed doors to talk about a budget. That is public. That needs to be public knowledge, whatever's being said there. I guess Pryor's statement wasn't done. He said, quote, a lot of us are very passionate about our athletics program. Concerns about the future have been expressed. We are in an uncertain time regarding the future of college athletics. That future is fraught with substantial and intersecting legal risk. We did not speak with the precision or clarity that we should have on Monday, but no statement made or action taken during that meeting changed the board's plan for today's closed session, our commitment to respect the legal ground for closed session, or the accuracy of our published agenda. Sounds like a CYA statement, right? We're covering our you-know-what because we don't want to deal with it. Look, the legal system starting to get involved here. We don't want any more piece of that. Look, we weren't going to do this. Maybe some people spoke out of turn a little bit. We got a little too excited there. And man, when have we ever had board members deciding to get a little crazy with what it is that they're going to say? Florida State, right? Florida State has the streamed online board meeting where they start to get real gutsy about what it is that they're going to say about the ACC. Some of that apparently going on here in North Carolina, especially if they're doing this on the heels of presenting budget numbers where they've got a $17 million deficit coming up next year and they've got real money problems. There's going to be some people being like, well, then let's just get the hell out of here and get to the land of $40 million extra dollars per year between college football playoff TV money and our big TV contract. On Monday, Pryor and other board members made several statements indicating they would discuss the athletics budget in closed session. And further, it made comments that indicated the board has previously discussed the athletics budget in closed session. Yeah, that's not good. Based on the way they were trying to backtrack there, you do not want anybody indicating the board has previously discussed the athletics budget in closed session. Quote, I think it's imperative that we carve athletics out of the approval today and we have an extended discussion in closed session at our meeting on Thursday so that we can, okay, so this is what was said on Monday. Let me phrase that before I start reading this. This is what Pryor told the board on Monday. I think it is imperative that we carve athletics out of the approval today and we have an extended discussion in closed session at our meeting on Thursday so that we can hear just how bad it is and what needs to be done to remedy it. And I think that's best to accomplish Thursday in a closed session. I mean, so that's him saying like, hey, we should take the athletics discussion on Thursday. And he came back on Thursday and said, no, just kidding. We were kidding about that. Very dysfunctional. If you're really following this and thinking this through as you're reading the article, very dysfunctional, it would appear. The Board of Trustees at North Carolina right now. The trustees expressed concern about an initial $17 million budget. Trustee Jennifer Halsey Evans said during Monday's meeting that the board was in closed session in November discussing the athletics budget. She reminded Trustee Ralph Meekins that certain discussions were in closed session. Quote, we were in closed session, so let's be thoughtful about how we characterize it, she told Meekins during an exchange about athletics director Bubba Cunningham. Oops. So we've got mixed messages all over the place here from UNC. But anyway, WRAL reporting all of that. They've been on top of a lot of this. So appreciate all their work, honestly, in keeping all this together and tracking all this down. But that's where UNC appears to be at right now, not in a position to be real decisive about where they want their future to be and what the actions are now necessarily that everybody needs to be taking. At least not decisive about getting everybody on board with the same path at the moment. I still would say, well, I will repeat what I said to begin the show. I think North Carolina is as interesting as anybody in the ACC right now, the most interesting to me, but not the most consequential, because the most consequential is going to be Florida State and Clemson, who just went and took this thing head on, man. They were the front lines. Like, they were not afraid to be the first guys out there to storm the beach, right? They're the ones who are jumping out first, and North Carolina is kind of waiting behind. Like, all right, well, let's see what happens here and let's figure it out, because we know that we'll have a spot. We can let these two guys kind of duke it out and get down and dirty with everything. All right, click the $ below the chat box if you want to be a part of the show tonight. That is how you can attach your donation to your super chat. It will pin it in a separate column for me and ensures that you make it on the show tonight. Could not do it without all of you guys who support that way. So I truly do appreciate it. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you're not watching this live and you want to drop in a question or comment, you can do it with a donation there. John-Kurtz-4 again on Venmo to do that. And I will read it to kick off the next show, like I did earlier today with my guy Clint. So that is another very easy way to support the channel, and a totally free and easy way to support the channel that I would really appreciate is just to like the video. If you could like the video, that would be awesome. Leave me comments. Keep the comments flying in the live section, but also in that comment section under the video. Where do you think UNC winds up? Where should they be going? Tell me what you think there in the comments. Justin is absolutely correct. Justin, billable hours always will remain undefeated. Yes, even within North Carolina, man. They just want to prop up that local Chapel Hill economy with some more billable hours there for those who really need them most, the attorneys. Between that and everything going on with the NCAA, which we're about to cover here in just a moment, Yes, there are billable hours to be had damn near everywhere in college athletics right now. Good time to be a college athletics lawyer. Could somebody have like tapped me on the shoulder back in 2007 when I first stepped foot on K-State's campus and told me like, "Hey, why don't you start preparing for law school? You love sports. It's going to be a total S show by the time you get out." I mean, we were going through a wave of conference realignment about the time I would have been graduating there, and I had another one on the horizon here. Like, just get your law degree and get ready to do that, and you will just have endless billable hours. I'd be living in like a penthouse in both Manhattans right now. I could have a penthouse in Manhattan, Kansas, and Manhattan, New York right now, and I've been doing that with all these billable hours. But anyway, said I got the communications degree, and you guys get to listen to me talk here on YouTube. So, different strokes for different folks. But Justin, appreciate you, my man. Bill G, what's up, Bill G? Bill G says House litigation must be settled before ACC issues can proceed to resolution. Some think Congress may get involved after the NCAA settles. All that must clear before realignment will move much further. Yeah, which makes total sense, right? Everybody needs to know what the system is going to be that they're inheriting here. And it does, by the way, feel like with this week, I'm going to read you some of the reporting here, but I will just tell you right now, the reporting from Dellinger and Thamel says that like this is the week that everything on the NCAA side, like the college side, is going to get approved. Like they'll be able to approve whatever this settlement proposal is going to be. So we could have that part of it as soon as this week, which will be a big step toward resolution. Congress, you are correct. Some think Congress may get involved after the NCAA settles, because we've read that in the Dellinger pieces the last few weeks, that there is concern among admins in college sports that even with whatever settlement gets put together with this, it will not be enough. And therefore, they will still be at risk. They would still be at some legal risk there unless Congress were to step in and provide them with some extra help. There was even this was on my reading list that I didn't actually get to this week. Let me see if I can pull the headline up. Which one was it? Yeah. From Front Office Sports, there's an article out this week that's called A Breathtaking Lobbying Campaign, the NCAA's Sophisticated Effort to Save Amateurism. And it talks about over the past 5 years, the NCAA and Power 5 spending 8 figures on a carefully coordinated operation involving some of Washington's most powerful lobbying and PR firms, with the goal to halt and even reverse the anti-amateurism movement that has earned players millions. Point being, there's been a lot of lobbying going on with people in Congress for a while, from those in college athletics who will be on the losing side of all of this, no matter how it breaks down in the settlement. So there have definitely been efforts to get some involvement there, but me personally, I am not optimistic about it at all, just because it's an election year. There's a ton going on, and they can never seem to decide on anything anyway. I mean, it feels like it's a monumental task to get anything accomplished in Congress right now anyway, let alone them. Like, I just can't see them being like, yes, we'll throw college sports to the front of the line. I mean, no matter how much lobbying they've actually done. So we'll see. And maybe that just means it gets done further down the line. Maybe they'd have to deal with another lawsuit in the meantime and all that. I don't know, but you're right. There is a lot to be decided with everything happening in the NCAA. I guess the NCAA would be more like the big, and then you'd have like the smaller with Florida State and Clemson and the ACC. But yes, I think your point is generally correct there, and I think we're just on track for that to resolve itself, or at least begin to resolve itself sooner. Especially with, again, the report from Brett McMurphy that the ACC people in the ACC are like, why the hell would we settle with Florida State and Clemson? Like, we have no reason to. We have all the leverage here. They're the ones trying to get out. We would not do that. That makes it seem like that's going to go on even longer. So appreciate you, Bill. Thank you, sir. Always love hearing your perspective. Are you a legalese expert yourself? Are you in the law game? You an attorney? I don't know why I said that so weird both times, but I'd be curious to know there, because I believe it seems like the couple times you've chimed in, you act like you are someone that has some good legal acumen. So always love that. Always love to get that perspective here on the show. David, what's up, David? Appreciate you, David. David says, I had been wondering if some of the trustees want to use the budget issue to force out the AD, then spoke out of line in support of the ACC. Well, the AD part seems That seems weird. I don't know all the politics that have gone on for a long time. Like, is there a long-standing beef with Bubba Cunningham there that some of these board of trustees members have? There very much could be other politics at play here that I just don't have the super intimate knowledge of. I've been working to try and get somebody that's been covering this on the North Carolina side of things to come do the show so we could get a little more insight into that. I would be curious about that. So there may be some stuff that we're not even accounting for right now that would be the real true issue that they have with Bubba Cunningham. But my thought was like, how is it Bubba Cunningham? Maybe it is. Maybe there are things I don't know financially that he's done that has led to some of this deficit. But like the real problem is just that they're not. I mean, if they were in a conference that is the conference that they frankly probably deserve to be in based on just merit of their brand and how much value they would bring, then this wouldn't really be that much of an issue. I was kind of like, what are we doing blaming Florida State's not blaming their athletic director for the position that they're in, right? Like Florida State is very much blaming the conference. So blame the conference. But yeah, it very much could be, David. I think at least I don't know. And guys like Greg Flugar would probably be the most in tune of anybody on the YouTube scene with this and what is going on there. If there is more backstory to that we're not getting with all of it. So anyway, appreciate you, David. Thank you for the contribution. Thank you for your support of the channel, my friend. Mike, what's up, Mike? Mike Honcho. Love the Mavericks logo there too. Mike, thank you for your support. Dumb question, but UNC has a $5 billion endowment. Why can't that be used to cover any budget problems? Should be able to find enough donors to cover the shortage for sports. Go Mavericks. This is one of those questions that I think is a very good question. And I feel like I should like have a better answer for that or know what the specifics are on how that works and how you use the endowment. I mean, like I thought the same thing about like Stanford and Cal, right? I feel like this came up with Stanford and Cal when they were going to the ACC and you were saying like, well, they're taking such a reduced share and such a big hit in the money that will be coming in from the TV contract. But what about all this money that they have? They have these massive endowments, like Stanford in particular, this incredible endowment. Why can't that money actually be used? How does that work? I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't have the specific answer for you on that. There would probably be someone in the chat that can give you a better answer to that, honestly, than I can. So I'm peeking around the chat here to see on that. But it's not a dumb question at all, Mike Honcho. And I can look. I'll live Google for you here. Can you use endowment in an athletic department? Well, the first thing that pops up is an article where it says, column, universities can't use endowments like piggy banks. Yes, universities can use endowments for athletics, but they usually don't use them beyond what they plan to withdraw annually. Endowments are funds or assets the universities donate to provide ongoing financial support. Hopefully that helps a bit, but that's what I got for you right now, Mike Honcho. That is what I got for you right now. Thank you for a good question. Hopefully somebody in the comments will be able to give you a better answer on that. This is where like, look, I level with you guys. I follow all this and I want to give you my take and opinion on all these things. I also sometimes have to remind you, like I'm a sports radio host who got a communications degree from a state school. So like I'm not always like privy to great answers to this. So you've stumped me a little bit on that, Mike Honcho, for like the specifics of it. But thank you for your support. Thank you for being here on the channel. And I will again reiterate, that is not a dumb question. I'm seeing here. So like Hiking Cat says at K-State, this puts it in a good perspective for me. Like the Ahern Fund is the endowment for athletics, which is, where you push any money that you're donating to athletics is going to that Ahern Fund. At K-State, the athletic department, separate entity from K-State proper. That is correct. That's K-State has bragged about that for a while, that it's self-funded there in the athletic department, not taking monies from other parts of the university. Someone else, endowments usually specify what they can be spent on. So, okay. Yeah, probably would be a tough fight, I would imagine, with the university to get some of that would be my best guess there, putting all this together. Okay. Craziest week ever in NCAA history, like most consequential week ever in NCAA history. We have gotten to 50 minutes into this thing. We are over 50 minutes into this thing, and that is it's a weird world we're in, but we have not talked about being on the brink of a historic settlement decision, according to Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports. That is what he said right here, his words, what he calls it. On the brink of a historic settlement decision, the NCAA is facing pushback from one of its most prestigious basketball conferences. Okay, so we're going to start with the part where G5 is not real happy with this. In an email Saturday to our members, Big East Commissioner Val Ackerman expressed strong objection to the NCAA's proposal on how it is determining back damages related to the consolidated settlement in the House, Hubbard, and Carter antitrust cases. So the back pay, the NIL back pay. She's seeking ways to alter the plan that the NCAA and A5 have orchestrated, she writes in the letter, a copy of which was obtained by Yahoo Sports. So good reporting here. Ross Dellinger obtains a letter where the Big East commissioner is pissed. That's the long and short of it. The settlement in the final stages of adoption consists of three main concepts. You guys know this if you've been following along here on the channel. Back damages owed to former athletes. That's the NIL back pay, and that's $2.77 billion. Revenue sharing moving forward so that they avoid lawsuits like that. That would be upwards of $22 million annually per school. And the overhaul of a variety of NCAA elements, including scholarship and roster limits, governance structure, and enforcement arm. Under the formula, the Big East will be responsible for about $5 million to $7 million annually, or as much as $70 million over the next decade, a figure that works out to about $600,000 to $700,000 per school per year. Based on the numbers we have reviewed, the liability of the 22 non-FBS conferences under the proposed formula appears disproportionately high, particularly because the primary beneficiaries of the NIL back pay amounts are expected to be FBS football players, Ackerman wrote. So the Big East, obviously, basketball conference, power conference in basketball, not in football. They're saying, look, most of this money is going to FBS football players. Why are we at the Big East worried about that? Why are we concerned about that at all? Quote, I have voiced the Big East's strong objections to the proposed damages framework through recent emails to NCAA President Charlie Baker and his counsel, and through comments during commissioner calls over the past 2 weeks. Okay, so they're not happy. They're not thrilled at all. There was another piece of this. In the Big East, okay, yeah, here's some better context on that. In the Big East, a reduction of $600,000 annually for a decade is a much higher percentage of a school's total budget. UConn, the only public school member of the Big East with an FBS football program, has a reported budget of $90 million. The school, which has won back-to-back national titles in basketball, is believed to be the highest grossing athletic department in the league by far, which makes total sense. That makes total sense. By the way, Power 5 schools are expecting to see a reduction of $1 to $2 million in distribution annually for 10 years, which would be about 2% of their budget. 2% of their budget. And there have been complaints here. Believe it was in the ESPN article, but there have been complaints from some of the G5s that it would take up to 25%. Instead of 2%, people are going all the way up to like, this may be 25% of what I've got here. Like, that kills me way more than it does these Power 5 schools, even though they will be paying $1 million or $2 million per year, and we would be paying $600,000 if you're the Big East or whatever. It's a sliding scale based on conference there. So that's their real issue. That is, and frankly, that's a big issue, and it's an understandable issue. It's just one that unfortunately, I don't know how they're going to get many people to really care about it too much, because we don't care about the Big 12 or the ACC, right? Like, it just, everybody looking down the food chain, nobody is looking out for the greater good in college athletics here. I would not expect there to be a whole lot of sympathy for G5 schools. Well, perhaps there will be sympathy. I would not expect there to be a lot of action taken on behalf of whatever sympathy or empathy would be there in the case of those conferences. That also doesn't mean you shouldn't fight it. So I can definitely understand why we're seeing a fight here from the Big East commissioner, but um, I don't know that it's going to do a whole lot of good. It also is just like you look at the future of this thing and where things are going, and it's like, man, you're continuing to hurt the smaller guys more and more with everything that happens, right? You're going to throw out there this 22 million thing with what you want to pay everybody moving forward, and Big 12 schools could say, well, hey, I mean, 22 million for us, that could be like 50% of what we're taking in, but it's only going to be 25% or 30% for a Big 10 or an SEC school. I am pulling these figures out of nowhere, like kind of a somewhat educated stab at that. But you get the point, right? The Big 12 and the ACC could look up and claim the same thing, like we're getting screwed too. Like, we feel for you, group of five. Like, we truly do. We have empathy. They can have empathy, right? They're again, Big 10 and the SEC, they can just have sympathy for everybody. I don't think that they do. I certainly don't think that Greg Sankey does. But the empathy piece of that is important. The Big 12 and the ACC could say we have empathy because we're getting screwed by what we're going to have to pay moving forward. If we're able to meet all of that, it's going to put us at a much greater disadvantage than it is the SEC or the Big 10, because they've got all this extra TV money and now they've rigged the college football playoff revenue distribution in their favor. So, like, we get it, we understand, but we can't really do much because we're taking these huge hits from up top. So we don't want to advocate for taking on more money out of what's going to be the House settlement, because then that will disproportionately hurt us in the Big 12 or the ACC more than it will hurt the Big 10 or the SEC. Now, the Big 10 or the SEC is not, I mean, they will not want to pay it in general, of course. They definitely won't want to pay it in general. But it doesn't matter as much to them. And they could even look down the line and be like, well, yeah, it'd be a little bit more money for us, but it's hurting those guys even more proportionally as all this goes. So you see how this all trickles down. So, like, feel bad, understood, probably not anything that's going to happen. And I think they sort of realize that. So Ackerman, who is the Big East commissioner, says, well, Ackerman and other non-FBS leaders plan to fight for a change in the formula. She is unclear how much time or leverage they have in such a battle with leading defendants in the case, being the high revenue football powers. Power conference leaders are planning to vote and in all likelihood adopt terms of the settlement in independent meetings of their board of presidents and chancellors this week. So again, circle that. This is the piece I was talking about earlier. This week. Talking about this week being the week that this all goes down. Decisions are expected starting as soon as Tuesday and running through Thursday. So be watching in the middle of the week. I mean, it could be a hell of a live show on Wednesday with that basically already being carved out. The NCAA Board of Governors plans to meet Thursday when they are expected to review and potentially authorize the settlement as well, according to Ackerman's letter. Big East leaders are expected to further discuss the matter Tuesday from their league meetings in Florida. College sports insiders describe this week as the most consequential in college sports history, as leaders not only approve the massive back pay terms, but also agree on a framework around a new model that will topple amateurism once and for all. So, I mean, there you go. Also, if you prefer a nice little Jim Phillips quote in the middle of all of this, quote, this is a seismic shift in college athletics. It's not a matter of if it is going to happen. ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips said this week. Thank you, Ross, for getting us another Jim Phillips appearance here. I always love a good Jim Phillips appearance to remind us of all of the great work that he has done throughout this entire process and putting everybody at a bigger financial disadvantage in the college football playoff. There is a little bit more info here from Dellinger too, and I do see that I have some super chats. I promise I will get to them here in just a moment. What the new model will look like, what we're expecting out of this settlement framework. It's another stressor between the power conferences and all other Division I members, exacerbated by disparities in football revenue and the new college football playoff distribution model. The power leagues are slowly separating themselves from the lot. He says the marriage between the two entities altogether under the NCAA umbrella is nearing a complete collapse. So we're on the verge, yes, of, this just being hey, we've got one set of rules governing this top tier, Power 4, whatever you want to, if it's going to be Power 3 by then, whatever you want to call it, and then everybody else. So this new model is expected to include a separate governance structure for power conference only rulemaking and enforcing. That's according to those with knowledge of the plans. And Dellinger even references it is a similar structure to that proposed in December by NCAA President Charlie Baker. And the proposal that he had was sort of similar in the way that we have this revenue sharing plan that's going to be $22 to $25 million for the current players right now that you're going to have to pay them. Charlie Baker had a component of that in there. Like you'd have to opt into paying whatever that number was. Was that like 30 million? I forget the specifics on that. It's been a minute since we read that and went over that. But he had something like that where you'd have to opt in. If you want to play at the highest level, you got to opt in and commit to pay this. This won't be quite as like hard of a line drawn, but it'll basically be like, if you want to be as competitive as everybody else, you're going to have to pay that full $22 to $25 million in the new governance structure. So that seems like a pretty significant detail there from Dellinger that is included in this story. Like the new model, what is agreed upon, will have a separate governance structure for power conference only rulemaking and enforcing. The new model is expected to be implemented in fall 2025. That's crazy, guys. I mean, we're talking about literally next football season. We obviously have the upcoming 2024, but the 2025 football season, having this be our world, that will be on us very quickly. It does not seem like it was very long ago that Texas and Oklahoma left. The new model will permit schools to directly compensate athletes for their name, image, and likeness in a revenue sharing concept that includes a quasi salary cap. The cap could start as high as $22 million annually per school. The revenue sharing element is permissive. While schools are not required to do so, those in the power leagues are expected to at least aggressively work to hit a cap amid a competitive recruiting landscape. All right, so that's I would wonder how that gets. I mean, I get why he's saying they're expected to aggressively. But what does that mean exactly? That you're expected to aggressively pursue the cap? Like, could you have some form of relegation if somebody is just going to say, we can't really do it. We'll pay $6 million, whatever that might be. Is that, hey, that's too low. You're out. See you later. I'd be very curious to know how that would actually be handled. In the group of 5 conferences and the non-FBS league, sharing revenue is more difficult. At that level, athletic departments do not normally turn a profit. They rely heavily on university and state funding and often struggle in this NIL era to offer athletes much in third-party benefits. So here's basically, this is like the why we would have different governance structures for Power 5 and everybody else, which I do think, I think most people generally understand why, but it's a little bit extra there. The average G5 collective is believed to have on hand around 1 million compared to the 5 to 15 million in the power conferences. And yeah, I can vouch for that. I think even, most Big 12 schools are over 10 million when you're talking about all sports there, namely mostly football and men's basketball. But if you're going to be competitive right now, I think you've got to be over 10 million on that number. And the average G5 collective has 1. Non-FBS leagues, those numbers are believed to be far lower than even those in G5. For those conferences, such as the Big East, the back damages loom as a significant expense compared to their athletic budget because the NCAA's formula is calculated on basketball-related distribution and not total athletic budget. The Big East is at a financial disadvantage. So this is the NCAA's formula, what they are withholding money from, right? Because the chunk that the schools will pay for here is just in money that they will not get from the NCAA. And a part of that is NCAA tournament revenue that they would be kicking back to the schools. That is a part of how they will hold money back, which puts the Big East at a financial disadvantage because they'll get hurt by that. But yet they don't have football. They're not one of these big Power 4 football conferences. It's so points out, Dellinger says its success in basketball is actually a hindrance. The league routinely earns more in distribution than even some power conference leagues, but its athletic budgets without FBS football programs are often significantly lower than the power or G5 conferences. So yeah, just more ways to say that the poor old Big East is getting screwed a little bit there. We've got more reporting. Let me see if there's an important detail to get you from Pete Thamel. Pete Thamel has a little bit on the Big East here. He says the cost annually for the Big East is projected to be between $5.4 million and $6.6 million over the next decade. The West Coast Conference will pay between $3.5 and $4.3 million. The lowest level of annual payouts expected to be withheld for smaller leagues is just under $2 million, estimated to be more than 20% of what those leagues get from the NCAA annually. So remember, that figure for like the Power 5 schools was like the 1 to 2% range, and we're talking about up to 20% here for some of those schools. So Thamel does a good job kind of laying it out there, like how and why some of these schools are viewing this as unfair from the NCAA. He also does say there's a counter to those numbers, as nearly 300 schools would be paying for 60% of the settlement, whereas 68 power conference schools from 4 major football leagues will be paying for 40% of the whole thing. So they're taking care of most of it, leaving the 20% for everybody else. If you look at it that way, you'd say, well, they're certainly taking on a big chunk of that. But look, I understand, man. I very much understand the smaller schools being like, hey, this sucks. We're getting screwed, because they are. They are. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. In every single way, with the way the system is set up now, they're definitely getting screwed. They are. So I feel for them. Not sure that anything can really be done, but there you have it. That's the update on what's set to happen this week. That's a good primer for what to expect this week. I imagine by the time we're talking next Sunday, we will know what this future settlement and revenue sharing plan looks like for the future of college athletics, to be implemented in just over a year, in like 15 months. Like, that will be the reality of college athletics. It's pretty wild that we are right on the precipice of it. All right, let me clear up get to all the last super chats that we got here. Appreciate all of you guys so much who popped in with those. Thank you. Like Nate. Nate, I actually had not heard this. Nate says, John, any truth to Canzano's article about Oregon State moving Olympic sports to the Big 12? Had not heard anything about that. I have not looked at John Canzano's site in quite a while. I did not happen to see that going around on Twitter, but I have not been on Twitter quite as much lately. You can follow me, though, at JL Kurtz. And, by the way, follow the Facebook page, John Kurtz Show, Instagram, John Kurtz Show, TikTok, John Kurtz Show, to get some extra content from me. Here we go, from May 15th. All right. OSU to the Big 12 in an Olympic way. The Big 12 Conference has had ongoing conversations with Oregon State about adding the Beavers women's gymnastics program next season. Big 12 source told me on Wednesday all coaches are in favor of it. The Beavers gymnastics program has enjoyed team success and featured individual talents. No comment or official news from Oregon State or the Big 12 so far. The Big 12 would still need to put the potential addition of OSU to a vote. And so then Canzano questions, does this mean all sports at Oregon State and Washington State are eventually headed to the Big 12? I'm being told to pump the brakes on that front. This maneuver might be nothing more than the Big 12 trying to fortify gymnastics competition by adding a program with some proof of performance. There are dozens of examples of Olympic sports programs that compete in a variety of conferences as lone sports. Still, it looks like another relationship building play by Oregon State Athletic Director Scott Barnes, doesn't it? Remember, Barnes already signed on for a home-and-home football series with Big 12 members, K-State and Houston. The AD told me as those football deals were being announced, quote, this is an intentional strategy. Okay, well, so I would say, to answer your question there, Nate, yes. I mean, I know, like, we're all not exactly Canzano lovers here, but he is certainly one thing he was very connected with, like, Oregon State and Washington State through the process that we were all giving him crap for, because he was buying everything they were feeding, them being the ones that really needed that to work and the Pac-12 to stay together. So that he's got legitimate sources there. He's got a direct quote from an AD saying that, like, he's intentionally scheduling Big 12 schools to try and relationship build there. So it's not a rumor. I would say that I believe Canzano's reporting there on the Oregon State gymnastics thing and whether or not that'll happen to the Big 12. But he did also point out it does not seem like it's imminent that the rest of the Olympic sports that come into the Big 12. So that would be my take on it. Yes, this is kind of thing I would definitely trust Canzano on. Like, I don't think Canzano's problem was really getting like information from the schools that like lying about stuff that was coming from the schools. I think he was just taking their word far too much and using that to brazenly fuel his fairly ignorant opinion about everything that was happening there with the Big 12 and the Pac-12. So I think this is a different case, and I would say yes, I would definitely trust that for the gymnastics at least. So appreciate it, Nate. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. I had not seen that yet. Aloha, Nate. What's up, Aloha, Nate? Aloha, my friend. All member schools agreed to the NCAA rules against NIL for all those years. All member schools should pay. Okay. Interesting, Nate, because I've seen some make the argument on the other side, like, hey, it was the NCAA that was really fighting as an organization to keep amateurism a thing. And so they should bear the brunt of this because it wasn't the individual schools. They didn't have a choice. It was but to that, I would say I understand where you're going with that argument, but these schools were very much complicit in it, very much wanted that to be the reality, and very much had leaders all over the place who were fighting for that to be the reality. So yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. Everybody should be paying. I still would, if it's a shot at the like Big East, I would still say there can be different discrepancies and disparities within that on who's paying what. But someone was going to be unhappy. I don't think there was like a totally fair way to distribute all the money where like nobody, where you'd be able to get everybody satisfied about everything. Right. So there was probably an inevitability to some of that. What's up, David? Appreciate you, David. David squeaking one in here at buzzer beating time. David says the Power 2 will have to skip their DQ field trips if they lose that $1 to $2 million from the NCAA. Yeah, I know, right? It's like, oh, okay. $1 to $2 million. What will we ever do by missing out on that money? I thought it was funny. This is actually about the ACC. This is a little rip on the ACC, and I'm sure they're not alone. I don't know where the Big 12. If the Big 12 is hanging out at the Ritz, there are probably some things you could do the same thing, point at Big 12 hypocrisy a little bit here too. But Dan Wetzel on the Yahoo Sports College Football Inquirer podcast was like, wait, so at Amelia Island, these ACC meetings, they were taking place at the Ritz-Carlton where the rooms are literally $1,000 a night. I think that was a detail Dellinger had in a story too. The rooms are $1,000 a night. And we're sitting here having these meetings about how we don't make enough money in our conference. We don't have enough money to go around. You know, like maybe that would be the time to stay at a Holiday Inn Express. They've got conference rooms usually, like a little board room, at least a business room. You could all meet there. Or you could go George Kliavkoff in the Pac-12 and just ditch any office at all and work virtually and have all your meetings virtually. Anyway, I thought that was funny. But yeah, probably the equivalent of a trip to Dairy Queen. Just a little drop in the bucket for the SEC and the Big Ten with all of this. It'll be a little more substantial to the little guys. One of the themes of the show tonight. All right. I think that's going to wrap it up. Appreciate all of you guys so much. Please like the video as you exit tonight. And leave me a comment in the comment section of the video below it as well. Where do you think North Carolina winds up? And where should North Carolina winds up? Let me know what you think. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you were not here live, you can leave your question or comment there. I will read it to kick off the next show. If you do so, just ask Clint because it happened earlier today during the show. Continue to spread the word about the channel. Follow me on all the platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. It's John Kurtz Show there to get more content, have a little more access here. You can also email me, johnkurtzshow@gmail.com. If you have something. BYU fans, like I said, looking for all leads on tickets to the game in Provo when that time comes around. So I believe that's it. I think that's it. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, wherever you're on social media, word of mouth. Let your friends and family know. Let's continue to grow this channel even bigger and bigger. Love all you guys. Appreciate all of you guys. And I will talk to you all soon. Have a great start to your week.